Here it is, the HTC One M8. In this very special launch day show, we've got the handset in the flesh, and we'll be bringing you everything you need to know about HTC's brand new flagship, including all the new features explained in depth, specs, power and performance, when you can get your hands on it and for how much, and how it stacks up against the Samsung Galaxy S5. And be sure to stick around to the end, as we'll be delivering our hands-on verdicts. But enough chit-chat, it's now over to Gareth Beavis and John McCann with what you came here to see.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Phone Show where we're looking at the new HTC One M8. It's right here. John, are you excited?
I really am. I really like this phone. I've had a play and it's a great bump from last year's HTC One, which we both loved anyway. And yeah, I think HTC have done a really good job here.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's a very difficult thing to do. You've got one hand, you've got a phone that was really successful, really powerful, and it did really well critically, maybe not so much in sales. So if you're HTC, what do you do? Do you go sort of evolve that and make it kind of similar, make the HTC One S, which is a phone, but theoretically like the successor to it? Or do you go reinvent the wheel again and try and make another big splash and get people really excited about a phone? And I think somehow HTC's managed to go right between the two and sort of stand astride both those columns, because it's a really, really nice phone. Design-wise, really love it. I mean, it's gone from like 70% to 90% metal, and that really shows when you hold it in the hand. I feel like it's kept the heritage of what the One was about, so boom sound, ultra pixels, and added some really clever features that actually improves that and evolve it. And I just think it's a really difficult problem to make a successor to a really good phone, and HTC's actually nailed it.
Yeah, and going onto the design a bit more, it does feel and look a lot more premium than the likes of the S5, which is all plastic, and it is even better than the original one as well. It's more curved on the back, so it sits more nicely in your hand. It's got a better weight distribution. They've even managed to incorporate a micro SD slot into the design.
That's going to be big for a lot of people.
Exactly, and that's something that they couldn't do because they were constricted by design last year. So having been able to go back to the drawing board and add it in without affecting the overall build of the phone, it's a really nice feature. And as you say, it's going to be a huge plus point for a lot of buyers.
So the interface has changed, but albeit only slightly, with Sense 6. Now to me, it doesn't seem like a huge jump up from Sense 5.5, but I think, HTC wants to make a big deal of it because it has refined the process. Blink feed is improved, the colours are slightly overhauled, so you've got a more unique, identifiable element to things like messaging and calling and blink feed again. But overall, it's still keeping the same ethos, the same simplicity that we saw before. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that it's done enough of an upgrade?
I mean, I don't think Sense really needed a big overhaul anyway. It was still a very good system, and HTC has really put its stamp on its Android experience. Sense is one of the most recognisable Android experiences out there. Only really comparable with TouchWiz from Samsung,
which a lot of people don't really like.
Exactly, and I think HTC's option is more elegant. And yeah, there are slight improvements in 6. One of them is when the screen is off, you can double tap to wake it and double tap to sleep it again, so you can quickly check a message. It's something that we saw LG bring with Knock On, and others have followed suit. Nokia now allows you to do it on some of its Lumias, and now the HTC has got it. It's a simple little feature, but it is very useful, and we've enjoyed using it on other phones, and it's great to use on here. Another one is the motion sensor from a blank screen. Without having to press the lock key at the top, you can swipe from the side and launch an app instantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think these gesture controls have been sort of rolling around phones for quite a while now, and they've really struggled to get traction because they are something that has to take an extra step. They don't feel very intuitive, and I think HTC is probably still a little bit in that camp, but there's definitely a step forward. The idea, once you remember, the idea of when the phone screen is off, swipe left for blink feed, swipe right for just getting back into the widgets, swiping up to get to your last app, it all makes kind of sense. It's remembering how to do it. We talked about that knock-on thing from LG. That's so good because you start using it on every phone, you're like, oh, it's not there, it doesn't work, and that shows it's a really intuitive feature. I'm glad HTC has got it in there. I'd imagine it's a patent situation that means they can't use it for everything, because what I liked about the LG was the fact you could knock on and off from the top of the screen at any point, and that would be your default way of powering the phone off. And it's a shame that doesn't happen here. But ultimately, it is a really good system. The fact that you can even swipe down and start a voice dialer. No one likes voice dialing still, but it's there and it's cool, and it actually works. It's robust, and that's what you need with gestures. You don't want to have to go again and again. This actually works. I think that's a really good feature. I like the fact that it's upgraded the key parts. So, I mean, the boom sound speakers, which I was, iffy about when I saw last year, turns out a lot of people like them. They're now really good. We've talked a lot about things like, the boom sound speakers being phone speakers essentially still, so they're still quite tinny. HTC's done a lot of work to make sure that all the sounds that you get out if you're listening to music are all reproduced really well. And so I think it's a genuine step forward. And you've listened to a few bits and pieces. You thought it was different as well, didn't you?
Yeah, you can definitely hear the difference, especially when you have the two phones side by side. Yeah. And you put the HTC One M8 against any other phone and their internal speakers, and it's going to win out every time. The clarity's there, the levels of all the frequencies of the pitch is just great. And it really makes a difference. And even when you plug in a pair of headphones, they've got a multi-phase amplifier in there, which really gives you the rich tone across the whole broad spectrum.
I was trying that today because for me, if you want to have a really good pair of headphones, that so you've got sort of an open back so that you can actually get a real sound quality to them. If you're on things like if you're on the train, for instance, or the tube, it's a very loud environment. And I'm not saying that you should boost things up all the time, but with say like the Galaxy S4 and iPhone 5S, I found that even at full volume that you have to really struggle to hear. Genuinely found that this was actually a real step above, and I could turn it up and I could actually hear things without having to kind of squish things to my head just to hear what's being said. And it's little things like that I think are really good.
So ahead of the launch, we were seeing lots of rumours saying that the HTC One M8 would have 2 cameras on its back. And, we were pretty sceptical. We thought maybe there are people messing around on Photoshop, maybe it's a fingerprint scanner, but no, it's come to launch and there are actually 2 lenses on the back of the phone. The main one from the HTC One, and then you've got the second one above it, which is mainly there just to add depth.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that it's called the duo cameras because essentially the top isn't really a camera, it's a sensor that can capture the depth of field. So you can, you take the picture with the ultra pixel sensor, which has been improved, image processing is improved. You've got the fact that it can take so much more information in, but it is still 4 megapixels, so people will see it as very similar. But on top of that, you've got a depth perception, which basically, as soon as you take that picture, you've got all this information captured in as well, so it knows how far things are. It gives a real sense of depth, and from that, you can actually change the foreground, change the background, refocus as you want it, make the picture exactly what you think it should be, and that brings some really good DSLR-like effects.
Exactly, and I mean, that detail stays with the image afterwards. It's not something that you have to utilise then and there once you've taken it. You can take the photo, you can go away, you can come back to it, and then you can start playing with the clever features that HTC have incorporated into the phone. So it just makes it really easy. It's not a feature that you have to turn on, it's always there in the background. That detail will always be there. You won't have to forget about turning it on or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's really important. If you look at what Samsung and LG are doing, you have to actually enable that first. And that's not really what you want in a photo. You want to be able to just take the picture and then do with it what you want afterwards. I'd say my only criticism of it is that while the camera interface is really simple and really good, once you've taken, I think that's a real big USP of the phone. So once you've taken the picture, you should be able to actually instantly refocus it. But what you have to do is go in, press edit, and then choose to U-focus, which, I'm sure HTC has debated backwards and forwards whether that's what it wants to do. But really, I think that should be an instant button. I think that's what makes the photos really look great. It's not a gimmick, it's actually a really important piece of hardware, and yeah, I think that could be improved. But on the whole, you've got these really quick, really fast snaps that have this information just baked right in, and I think that's the way things should go. You should have it hardware-based rather than software. You shouldn't have to sacrifice functionality just so you can have a new whizzy-bang feature. It should be there straight away and work within the parameters you've already set for your camera photography. One of the key things about this and other phones, the Snapdragon 801, people don't find CPUs very sexy, but this is a real step forward. The 600 that was in the HTC One last year wasn't good enough. Combined with HTC's fairly heavy battery use, it was probably the worst part of the One. It got better as software came out and HTC worked out how to improve it, but to the point of acceptability rather than going, this is really great. And then we saw the G2 and the Sony Xperia Z1 last year. They had the 800 and that really stepped things forward. And then this year we've got the 801, which is going in the Galaxy S5, the Z2 and this. And I've got to say, in the test, the battery is so good. It is, HTC said 40% more battery. It's easily that. And they said, 2 days worth of business use. That means not using things like the movies and playing games, which, some people will be like. But, that definitely holds up. And I very rarely say that because usually, 2 days worth of use is really 1 and a bit at best. And it genuinely holds up to 2 days, and it's that kind of stability in a phone that you're looking for. And it's the first time I've seen it from an HTC, to be honest. I can't believe that a company that's been so poor historically with battery life has actually managed to step forward.
So there is a good range of new features in the One M8. do you feel that it's enough of an upgrade from the One, and can it compete at the same level as the Galaxy S5 and the Xperia Z2?
Well, but let's be honest, it's not going to beat the Galaxy S5 in sales because Samsung's marketing machine is out of control. You know, people know the Galaxy brand, and that means that you get people that walk into their phone shop, they know Samsung, they hear there's a new one out, they feel safe with that, and that's good because it's good to have smartphones that people feel comfortable with. But I definitely think it's going to make it's got a lot of traction in it because this is a great phone. If the HTC One was critically acclaimed last year, this is one step above that. It's very rare that you see a manufacturer taking what was good about something else and managing to improve almost everywhere without really compromising what the actual heritage of the design was. We're talking a lot about, these feel like buzzwords, but really that's important. If people see, hold both next to each other, the One and the One M8, naming aside, it's going to be something that they really think, this is the better phone. The new one is better, but the old one is cheaper. And you can usually say, well, there's not much difference between these two phones from one to the next. And to have that step up while still maintaining the brand heritage, I think that's brilliant.
I definitely think it's more of a step up than the S5 is from the S4.
Oh, God.
Yes, it does look similar, but as you say, you hold it and it feels different. It feels better. It feels nicer. It fits in your palm a lot easier. And, it does feel like a different phone while still being very obviously an HTC One.
So that's what we thought of the HTC One M8, but here's our review to look at some of those features in a bit more depth.
The M8 is a phone that's as much about premium design as anything else, building on the philosophy of last year's model while improving in just about every area. The metal chassis is still there and now makes up 90% of the frame, up from about 70% previously. This is probably the most striking visual change, and it's one that makes you feel like you're holding something incredibly premium in your hand. The HTC One M8 is running the latest version of Android 4.4 KitKat, making things speedier under the finger, introducing transparent menu bars, and bringing greater prevalence of full-screen apps. The quad-core Snapdragon 801 under the hood is exceptionally quick, and coupled with 2 gigs of RAM, you're unlikely to see any slowdown even if you're a multitasking machine. One of the main criticisms of the HTC One was the fact it really sucked down battery when you used it heavily. The problem was rectified to a degree with software updates, but it didn't do away with it completely. The good news is the power pack in the HTC One M8 is much, much better. We'd wager you'd easily get 2 days medium usage out of it, and the new quick charge ability means you can top up quickly once things do go into the red. Other than design, the new duo camera on the M8 is the feature that will mark it out from the competition. Yes, it's still the same ultra-pixel technology from last year, and it's not seen much of a bump in the megapixel space, but the overall output is much enhanced. It's the new depth sensor that really makes the difference here, allowing you to refocus images after you've taken them and giving you a huge level of control over your photos. Still, in terms of the pictures you'll actually take, it's more of a mixed bag. It seems this effort to capture all the extra info has a consequence, as any scene with light coming in from another source will wash out the photo and cause parts of it to become overexposed. HTC has gone to great lengths to talk up its improved speakers on the front of the device, which it needs to given the added size needed to house them. The good news is they're so much better than last year, and the original one's sound wasn't bad at all. Audio is clearer and richer, giving a clean overall sound even when pumped up to maximum volume. The HTC One M8 is not completely without flaw. The camera is disappointing in some areas, and there are a couple of places where it feels like HTC has tried to do a bit too much or be too overcomplicated. But that and poor naming aside, the One M8 is a phone that takes the superb DNA of last year's device, improves it in nearly every way, and then packs it full of all the latest technology, and still finds space to stick a micro SD slot.
Right, so you want to know two things. When can you get it and how much will it cost? Well, the good news is it's available now, but only from limited retailers, so wider availability is expected in the coming weeks. In terms of price, it's a little bit more expensive, but that's to be expected from a flagship phone, so you won't have to save up too much to get the new HTC One M8.
And that's it for another phone show. Thank you very much for joining us. Leave your comments below and join us again soon.